Think about this for a second. You have right now, this is what's so unique, and these are just notes that I had to write down off the top of my head. You have Donald Trump, love him or hate him, a teetotaler, a guy who's never touched a drug, a guy who was raised, yep, you can say into wealth, was given millions of dollars from his father, someone who people may look upon as a trust fund kid, someone in a lap of privilege, right? That's how people may look at him. But this is a guy who has built a coalition. Let's just go through specific people, and then let's go through some demographics here so you can understand why this is so different. A teetotaler who's brought together the Joe Rogan audience, right? The audience of people who you would never expect, yeah, they're going to go out and vote for the guy who's never touched a cigarette, who's never touched a drop of alcohol, who's never touched a drug, in combination with, at the same time, the green car guy, Elon Musk. At the same time, Bobby Kennedy Jr., a former hippie, by the way. At the same time, J.D. Vance, a Marine, and a deeply conservative across-the-board representative, the guy who wrote Hillbilly Elegy, right? The guy who's from Appalachia. At the same time, by the way, has also brought together Hispanics and evangelical Christians. Think about this for a second. For the last 4 years, let's say 8 years, we've often wondered this, why evangelical Christians, people out there, when we go, you know what, we share so much more in common with black Americans because they're deeply Christian, they deeply value tradition, and they were very often at voting odds. I'm not saying that Donald Trump has won that demographic entirely, but certainly made some inroads where shattered in the era of Black Lives Matter. That's why your cities were burned down. That's why the riots took place. Black Lives Matter, who have rejected the narrative from the left in numbers that they haven't in modern American history, who at the same time not only find themselves on the same side as evangelical Christians, which is how it should have been, and Catholic Americans, which is how it should have been, but on the same side as the deafeningly silent, but you know, in agreement, Code Pink. You have a guy, Donald Trump, raised in the lap of luxury, teetotaler, who has the coalition, the mandate of the masses, from the Joe Rogan audience, everyone from that to Vivek Ramaswamy, the green car guy, the hippies of the Robert Kennedy Jr.'s, the people who are mistrustful of the establishment, Hispanic voters in the United States for the first time, evangelical Christians, Catholic Christians, and the black Americans, who, by the way, we also include among Christians in most of these statistics, who have rejected Black Lives Matter, who have rejected Antifa, who have rejected the hope and change, who have rejected the mantra of Bernie Sanders, who have rejected the mantra of Hillary Clinton, whether it's, in other words, free health care for all, free tuition for all. Hey, racism, homophobia, sexism, transphobia, everything is an ism, identity politics, privilege, check your privilege, patriarchy has all been rejected for enough people to form a coalition in this country for the first time where, look, I'm not saying that everyone's going to vote the same way, but we can all find ourselves in a room with people from groups and demographics who would never be able to have that conversation. Let me ask you this genuine question. Do you feel more comfortable today having a conversation with a Hispanic American who you didn't know how you voted, maybe thought you would be racist? Remember in 2016, he's racist. He doesn't want immigrants here. Do you feel more comfortable today as a conservative Republican talking about it and less ashamed and afraid that a black person will assume you're racist as the era of George W. Bush? Do you feel more comfortable today talking with someone who maybe supports the Go Green movement and wants to drive? Back in the day, let me put a finer point on it. If you saw a black American hippie or a Hispanic American hippie driving an electric car, you would have kept your mouth shut because you thought it was a lost cause. But today, every single qualifier that I just mentioned could be an indicator that that person is in the same camp as you. And you know what I ask? Is people out there right now, people who are watching who you maybe hate watching this, and I get it, we do some horse crap every now and then, but you know what? Hey, this is a guy who not only is saying that he's a president for all Americans, and you don't just have to believe it because he's not tried to jail or deplatform people who disagree with him. He's not tried to pull with a She's All That or whatever podcast, what Jen Psaki and what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did with Joe Rogan with this very show. Do you feel more comfortable today reaching across the aisle and having that conversation with people? I can tell you what, I've been here, and by here I know we're on Rumble, I know we have the betting odds if we're removed on YouTube or not. Back in 2008 and 2009, there were no conservatives. There were no Christians on YouTube because, by God, it was like being radioactive. Tonight, you had James Woods on the show, right next to John Rich, right next to Nick DiPaolo, right next to Gay William, who's a Latino gay American to the right of Attila the Hun. You want to talk, whether you like him or not, the coalitions that have been formed. And like I've said, hey, you need to hold these people accountable. You need to hold Donald Trump accountable, this administration accountable, because that's what we do. We're not the party of hero worship. But you do need to take a moment to acknowledge that there's been a fundamental restructuring of not only the American electorate, but the American fabric right now, where you can at the very least, and this is the great irony, because everyone thought, man, Donald Trump, I like him, but he's just too caustic. I like him, but he's just too divisive. You tell me, honestly, in your quiet moments, how much more comfortable are you? How much more bold and brave are you to tell someone who you wouldn't have before, whether it's someone like Code Pink, an anti-war activist, whether it's someone from the Green Movement, whether it's your neighbor who was a black American who, in the era of Obama, did you want to tell that person, you know what, I didn't vote for him because I don't agree with his policies? You more comfortable telling that exact same neighbor today, you know what, I did vote for Donald Trump because I think that's what's right for America? And you know what else? You know that you'll get a response from them that at the very least will be more likely, I should say, to be, yeah, you know what? I get it. Me too. That's a fundamental restructuring of where we are in the United States. And it came from the guy who everyone said would break us, would divide us. You think you'd be better off with Kamala Harris? Do you think you'd be better off if by some stroke of a pen Barack Obama could run for a third term? You know deep down the answer is absolutely not. And so, look, the people who I know maybe hate watching right now, just give this a chance right now. You talk all the time about wanting to reach across the aisle, find common ground. Well, guess what? The voting demographics and the coalitions that you see in the cabinet, in the administration taking place, and across this country as far as individual votes cast, say, this is the time. You don't just call for unity when it's your guy in power. This is the one time to those out there on the left where your person didn't win, but you actually can make some headway and have those conversations. That's a big difference. That's a turning of a page. And if every single one of us can just say, you know what? Okay, maybe we're more divided than ever before in the era of TikTok and Instagram and short reels. But yeah, we definitely have seen some blurring of lines here between the Democrat and the Republican Party. And if nothing else, that's a good thing. Give it a chance. You may not care that the income of the average American household will go up again like we saw for 4 years. You may not care that we're an energy exporter if you're on the Go Green movement. You may not care about, take your pick on the policies. But you know what? You are that much more likely, certainly if you're in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, you're that much more likely to be able to have that conversation with your neighbor. And everyone told you that it would be the exact opposite if this guy was elected. Remember that. Take a minute. And by the way, anyone, whether you're watching on the left or on the right, just take a second and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we can have those conversations. You don't have to agree. You don't have to find common ground based on a lie. And isn't that a beautiful thing? We can maybe find not some common ground, but find ground on which we can actually have a conversation and air our grievances and disagreements without burning cities down, without demanding a recount, without saying that our country is only available to the wealthy, privileged few of the white male patriarchy. That's an opportunity starting tomorrow, today, November 6th, that we can all